Winning teams have winning organizational cultures. It's an all-for-one, one-for-all mentality where people like to come to work and genuinely enjoy facing the challenges of the day with their colleagues. There is conflict. People do not always agree on everything, but in a winning culture, they are able to deal with those conflicts constructively and align around a common solution, implement it in good faith, and move on. Losing teams have a loser's organizational culture. It's not all for one, but one for one. People do not like coming to work. They resent their colleagues. Conflict is buried behind a veil of fakeness. Problems do not get addressed and thus remain and fester, corrupting the system and dividing the people further. Having the right culture is so important that my father, Dr. Adizes, founder of the Adizes Institute and author of countless books on management, calls it the secret of success. Yes, your culture is what determines your success. Think about it. Angola has tons of natural resources. Japan, very few. Why is Japan so successful and Angola is not? Switzerland has little to no natural resources, while Yugoslavia had plenty. One is an economic powerhouse, the other a defunct state. What's the difference? It is culture, not resources, that determine your success. It's who you are, not what you have. Your organization's winning culture is your most important asset, and you should invest in its culture. So today, I'm going to explain in some broad strokes what your organizational culture is made up of, what the components are. In order to explain this, I'm going to use the apple pie analogy, because creating an organizational culture is like baking an apple pie. The first thing you need when you're baking an apple pie is good ingredients, maybe apples. Now, if you have one bad apple, that will ruin your apple pie. The same thing is true of organization. These ingredients in your organization are your people. Now, if you have one bad apple, someone that's damaging your organizational culture, for who knows why, maybe, they're constantly looking after their own interests, they're not playing well with others, they're not good team players, well, that's going to destroy your organization's culture. Now, do we hire people that are not team players? No, we have tons of questionnaires and whole interview processes and HR to make sure we get good apples. Yet, speaking personally, working with many organizations, I see many bad apples in organizations. Did they hire them? No, they created them. Why? How? Because people are a product of their environment. They're a product of the system. And if the system is broken, you can hire as many good people as you want. The system will spoil those apples. So what is this system that we're talking about? When people say the system is broken, what are they talking about? Let's explore. Let's go back to our apple pie analogy. Let's assume we have good apples, but our recipe is broken. Now, the recipe tells us how much sugar to add, how much salt to add, how to put all the different ingredients together. And if we don't do that correctly, we will destroy our apple pie, we'll destroy our culture. In your organization, that recipe is your managerial process. Your managerial process defines how do problems go about getting identified and addressed. In some organizations, if you say there's a problem, that means you caused the problem. So better shut up and sweep it under the rug. What happens to that problem? Does it go away? No, it goes under the rug where it gets hidden and it starts to fester. Eventually, it becomes a crisis. And when it becomes a crisis, everybody starts pointing fingers at each other, saying it's your fault, and there goes your organizational culture. In other organizations, they talk about their problems. When they do, they use a lot of bad language. They scream at each other. It's a very negative managerial process. Their meetings are highly dysfunctional. Obviously, that's bad for your organizational culture. And the opposite is also true. I've been to organizations where when you sit in on their meetings, it seems like they have a great organizational culture. Everybody is super nice and super respectful. But at the end of the day, if you talk to some of the participants, they'll tell you the truth. The truth is that we didn't talk about the real problem. In fact, in this organization, I don't think anything's ever going to change. See what happened? The participants of that meeting have lost faith in their own ability to create change in the organization, their own ability to solve problems. That's also a bad culture. So you want a good managerial process that is able to proactively and constructively identify and address problems and opportunities. And that's largely what I'll be talking about on this channel. But that's not enough. Let's say we have good ingredients and a good recipe. We got it from, the best chefs in Europe. But our oven is broken. And we take our apple pie and we stick it in the oven and we set it to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the correct temperature. But our oven is broken. It's actually at 500 degrees. What's going to happen to our apple pie? Well, it's going to get burnt. And that happens to many people. You have good people working with a good managerial process, but the structure is broken. And the structure burns the people. Let me explain. The structure defines who has what authority, who's the boss. So, if we don't know who the boss is, for whatever reason, if it's unclear, what happens? Well, we know from Roman history, from the Imperium, from the time of the emperors, that at any point in time, if an emperor died and there was no one there identified to take their place, then the empire was de facto in civil war. The same thing happens in organizations. If we don't know who the boss is, then all the energy stops going into serving the system, but rather into who's going to end up on top. Everybody starts jockeying for position because they want to be the boss. So we have to know who the boss is. And not only do we want to know who the boss is, who has the authority, but their authority should match their responsibility. Imagine that I have very little authority, but a lot of responsibility, and I'm getting paid on a fixed salary. Eventually, I'm going to realize I can't do my job. I don't have the authority to make the decisions I need to make. I'm constantly knocking on the door of the CEO, and it's become a bottleneck. How long before I say, you know what, I have a job to do, but I can't do it. So I'm just going to retire on the job. I just got burnt. You see that? So we have to make sure that that organizational structure remains functional. Okay, but that's not enough. Let's say we have good people and good ingredients and a good recipe and a good oven. We have all that. But in our heads, you and I, who are making this apple pie together, in your head, you think we're making this apple pie for the, King of England. While I think we're making this apple pie for a fast food chain. When our apple pie comes out of the oven and falls on the floor, what am I going to do? I'm going to pick it up, blow it off, put it in a cardboard box and say, next customer, please. What are you going to say? You're going to start screaming at me and saying, what are you doing? It's been on the floor. We got to start all over again. And what's this cardboard box? We need a gold plate with flowers and ice cream. We're going to have a big fight, which is going to ruin our organizational culture. Why are we having that fight? Because we have different mission, vision, and values. So if you want to change your organization's culture, if you want to invest in something, what do you invest in? You invest in your people. You invest in your managerial process, make sure it's working correctly. Invest in your structure, make sure it's functional, make sure it's clear, and make sure that people are aligned on your mission, vision, and values. Those four things have to be dealt with holistically and in the right sequence. Now, if I lost you with that last sentence, let me explain. What does it mean holistically? Well, imagine you're eating an apple pie and it doesn't taste good. Will you be able to identify by eating the apple pie if the ingredients, if the apples were bad, or if the recipe was bad, or if the oven it was made in was broken, or if the purpose, the mission and vision of the chefs were not aligned? You have no idea why the apple pie tastes bad. All you know is that it tastes bad. The same thing is true for your organizational culture. If your organizational culture is not positive, it's not a winning organizational culture, you can't tell if it's the people or the process or the structure or the mission and vision. You can try and fire all the people and hire new people, but who knows if that's going to work? That's what many people try and do. They just get rid of people. It's the easiest thing to do, but that's not a holistic approach. We have to work on all four of them together in the right sequence. Adizes Institute has been helping organizations invest in their culture, helping them achieve significantly increased performance for over 52 years. So please follow and subscribe to learn more.